It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.
I haven't introduced myself.
Another podcast on a beautiful Friday in April. Let's say hello and introduce ourselves. Unless you don't want to, you can remain anonymous.
Hi, I'm Chad Jettner.
I'm Peter Lawrence.
I'm Kyle Bacher, and today we're going to talk about decision fatigue, which is basically the more decisions you make, more likely the decisions will be bad because it's wearing out your brain. Is that correct, Peter?
I don't know. That's one part of it. I think another part of it that I think about is if you have a choice of 3 items versus a choice of 20 items, the decision against the 20 items is more challenging.
But there's some kind of, well, no, there's some truth. There's truth to that, but I don't know. I mean, there is decision fatigue there.
There are studies.
But there's also like a sales thing where the number, like if it's more than 3 or less than 3, there's some kind of magic number you want.
The study I was thinking about sold jam in a grocery store. And they offered tastings of 6 flavors. They offered tastings of like 20 flavors. And they sold far more jam with the 6 flavor offering than they did with the 20 flavor offering.
Yes. So that's probably a built-in guard against decision fatigue, where you just like, nope, this is overwhelming. I'm not going to try. So I'm out of here. No jam for me.
Well, it's like picking apples, right? You go to an apple tree. How many apples are there to pick that are within reach?
47. Lot. I have a big tree.
47.
Chad, how many decisions do you make in a day?
I make a lot, but I don't participate really in the, my job is deciding constantly throughout the day, lots of things, right? Project-related issues. Outside of that, though, there's 100 different types of laptops. I don't care. I don't really care about. I go up whatever MacBook is new, right? I want the little MacBook. I'll go get that, right? I want an iPhone. I'll go get the nice iPhone. I'll get that. Maybe I'll get 2 because for me they tend to slide off the bar really quick. It's
which size and how much memory?
I get the smallest amount of storage and the largest screen I can, right?
Okay.
I take a lot of pictures. My phone is my primary camera, so that's usually equates to the big screen, nice camera. I like
big
that.
Screen, nice
anyway,
camera. Yeah.
And then outside of like my 9 to 5 or 6 to 6 or whatever schedule I'm on for work, I am incredibly habitual outside of this, right? Like I go to the same place for happy hour every Wednesday. I go to the same place for happy hour on Friday. I don't change it up. I drink the same thing. I practically wear the same style of clothes, right? Like, It's cold out. Which hoodie which of my 3 hoodies am I going to wear? All of the stressors and like fatigue inducing decisions that a lot of folks I just eliminate all that. Like, I don't worry about it, right? I'm not going to go to a microbrew pub and decide which of their 20 beers. I'm like, no, I'm going to go to the 1029 bar and I'm going to get a grain belt. There's so much of that stuff out there that's just, I understand where the concept comes from and where the idea comes from. I also understand it's really easy to just disengage from it, right? Like we don't have to choose from 500 different types of phones or, 10 different browsers or any of that. So I'm not saying this is a manufactured issue, but because I get it with what you and I do, Peter, as consultants every day. At the end of it, there is I am mentally exhausted, like mentally just spent and drained, right?
You've used up your brain power and your decision power, and you just want to veg for a while, right?
If it was manufactured,
not even really veg, but.
Yeah. If it was a manufactured thing, then you wouldn't have structured your life in such a way to avoid it. Like
I didn't intentionally do it though, right? Like being habitual has lent itself to eliminating decision fatigue as a thing that I would have to worry about. So
you've just naturally learned to fight it by simplifying your life.
I mean, a lot of times that kind of thing happens, right? Like there's been a lot of books written on it, Atomic Habits and other things, 10% Happier, doing all these things to like reduce, get to your core, happy path or whatever. I mean, if you think about like Oregon Trail, right? How many paths were there in Oregon Trail? How many decisions?
I don't know, but they all lead to dysentery, and my party is dead. So, Chad, you touched on something with just your routines. And that's kind of like, it's especially important for if you're like ADHD, things like that. Like, that's one of the things that they highly recommend is developing those routines. It helps you stay on track, but I think it also reduces decision fatigue and frees up your brain to focus on other things. I have a job that wears me the heck out. So I have standards I use for selecting laptops, but I always have to like dig through them and find them. I get questions, ask cries for help all day long. And then it's my desire to provide a really good answer to really help people out. So I'm in this constant decision-making mode. So I shouldn't be making important decisions at the end of the day.
Does this also sort of come down to perfection is the enemy of the good, or enemy of, I don't know how that
definitely
goes, but some cool saying.
That you're always debating on what the right path to take is to reach perfection. So you don't, if you have the answers already, like, it's going to be a Mac, you need a CPU that works. I mean, you want a screen size, like, these things. So like that kind of thing, make those decisions ahead of time once, and then you're done. And it's no longer really decision making. It's just choosing, like locating it among others.
And programming is kind of the same way. I mean, Chad, you've certainly refactored code, right?
Deleting code is one of my favorite things to do.
But not just deleting it, but changing it to look better, perform better, do something better, or because the paradigm has shifted and like that's identified as not the best way to do something anymore, right? So you kind of come back and you decide to get rid of it. But if at the time you stopped because it worked, which I think is, sort of a decision fatigue removing thing, like, I got my code working, I'm going to be done for now, and I'll revisit it later if there's time.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I don't know that there's much decision fatigue in there as just kind of like goal, like what is my goal? What is the point of refactoring? What am I trying to accomplish, right? And if it is a performance metric that I need to hit, or if it is business logic that failed to implement, that's the goalpost, right? And I think decision fatigue comes into play if that goalpost constantly moves, right? Like if you actually identify something and we're changing what success looks like constantly, well, then that's a different. And then I will get tired a little bit. And moving the goalpost not only will induce some form of intellectual fatigue, but also I'll just get grumpy, and you're not going to, the solution's not going to be optimal, right? Like, we'll eventually get to whatever your final cemented requirement is, but goodness gracious.
That's a good point. Like, people that have trouble making decisions will have made one and then revisit it over and over and over. And as a developer, you feel the pain of having that specification move.
Especially when they come back and bite you.
Well, I mean, I think it's important to realize, like, if you're having trouble making decisions, right, the downstream impacts of that can be massive, right? Like if you're in a role where your decisions, like, I'm gonna go at it this way, right?
Right.
Okay, so we do project-based work. I'm gonna write up some stories. I'm gonna send it to developers. We're gonna walk through it, and they're going to execute on it. Well, I made a bad choice over here. Now we're going to refactor. Now we're going to do it again and again and again. And the inability to make a clear and decisive decision, even a bad one. Well, I wouldn't say bad one, but like, boy, you're affecting a lot of people, right? And you're stressing a lot of people out if you can't do that.
Right. And that's sort of where not making the perfect decision, but making a good enough decision will get you so much farther, so much faster than either waiting to make the perfect decision, slowing everything, counting on that decision down, or, making a bad decision can cause those same problems. So you do want to not just throw darts at a board and call it good for the day, right? But
yeah. And sometimes, what what helps sometimes for me is like if I have to do if we do something, I mean, on my project we've had a lot of issues, like massive problems to solve, right? Do we do this or do we do this?
Right.
Well, start by just breaking the problem down into smaller and smaller
Yeah.
little chunks where you can decide on little pieces and make forward progress, and maybe like assemble some building blocks, and then get to a point where you can now say, okay, now we have to decide this way, that way, but we've got all this foundational knowledge. We've got all these, technical building blocks in place. So pivoting from one decision to the next isn't necessarily going to be the end of the world, right?
Yeah,
So
because you're taking a very complicated decision and turning it into like 10 easy decisions. Maybe not easy, but manageable. And I think, that's really the way of approaching, most tasks that are daunting.
It's almost
break it down.
almost the reverse, right? Of having too many choices and finding that right one, but then like take the hard choice, but break it down and make it smaller choices.
Yeah. Now, both of you are experienced, highly qualified developers. Would you say that, and of course you're going to agree with me, would you say that you're like pattern collectors, like you shop for better patterns all the time, and then you have this kind of in your quiver, in your golf bag, you have all these things already to pull out to solve problems?
I have a quiver and a golf bag. This is awesome. I can't wait to see
and
that.
then actually golf bags called quivers if you only want to use like 4 clubs. So now you have to choose which bag and how many clubs.
And I kind of have 2 quivers. I have best of breed. If you can possibly avoid this, never ever do this thing. Anytime I put a for loop inside another for loop, I question, like, is this really a good idea? Do I really know that the number of things are going to be reasonable and I'm not going to really, really hate myself later on? I've got a problem that I'm working on now that's got a recursion problem, right? And it ends up doing 50,000 recursive calls. And each call is fairly expensive, but the individual call itself is not too bad. I see you're glazing over a little bit, Kyle, but it's one of those things where call something that goes fairly quickly enough times, it's a pain, and it's just undoable.
So the for each isn't bad. The for each gets you in the weeds.
Going through it a bunch of times. What were you going to say, Chad?
I was going to say, I don't necessarily collect patterns anymore. We've all read the design patterns book, right? Like we all know what those core building block patterns are. And then like nowadays, really my continuing education is usually around things like, oh, everybody's doing OAuth now. I should learn what the different flows are. I should learn how to implement them in my language of choice, right? I'm never going to learn a front-end framework.
Never's a long
if I
time.
can avoid it. Yeah, I know.
And I'm never going to learn to code. So cheers.
I don't necessarily. And it's another. Again, talking about decision fatigue, like I know what my patterns are, right? I know what's in my toolbox, and various whatever the problems are arising. Okay, these are the puzzle pieces we can put in place to solve them, right? And then it's just a matter of implementing business logic, however, whatever's being requested of us. So, I'm probably way oversimplifying it, but during the day, like I said, by the end of the day, I'm taxed like completely.
Yep.
And so I've simplified everything else outside of that kind of unintentionally, mostly because I'm just I am ridiculously habitual, but I do notice how much it helps in my day to day, right? Like when I'm done with work, I know exactly what I can expect from the rest of the evening. So I don't have to just pick from 20 different restaurants or 30 different drinks or whatever. I'm going to go to one spot, sit there for 4 hours. I'm going to have a responsible amount of grain belt, and then I'm going to get home, right? That is immensely comforting. I was looking up as you were talking, Peter. I remember the book Atomic Habits. I'm not a huge self-help book guy.
Yep.
But I did look at some of the highlighted quotes from that thing, and some of them seem to kind of tangentially apply to what I'm saying. Like One of them is decide the type of person you want to be and prove it to yourself with small wins. Well, that's perfect, right? Like that's kind of what I do every day. I know what I'm trying to be. And I don't necessarily go and hunt for proof of that being the reality, but it rears its head sometimes. And I'm like, oh, yeah, cool. I'm still kind of what I'm trying to do is being echoed back to me in a way that validates that it's actually happening.
Yeah, you're just noticing progress happening as you're going through whatever you're doing. So that's affirming. You do daily affirmation.
And what I'm trying to be is, my little cousin is getting married in July, and we had to fill out this thing. She's got a website. And so there's quotes, fun facts about everybody. And the fun fact that I think I filled mine out at the bar after an irresponsible amount of grain belts, which I was living home. I'm fine. But I filled it out. And my fun fact was I'm literally the best person you know. Right.
Wow.
And
wait,
so that's my.
I'm not sure that zero grain belts wouldn't result in that same answer.
Thank you, Peter. You're not wrong. You're not
wrong.
But
it becomes less tongue in cheek as the beer flows. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm not kidding though. Like that is the North Star, right? And
yeah,
for me, every once in a while I see and I hear things that makes me, and I think what I'm really describing right now is that I have a massive, huge, gigantic ego, and that could also be the case.
Healthy, you have a healthy ego.
I have a healthy amount of immense self-worth, I think, is what the kids would be saying today.
That's good. So I do like the same, like all my clothes match, like black shirts, blue jeans. It's my wardrobe is very simple. In the wintertime, it's hoodie season.
Right.
Period. Unless it's going to be warm in the office, but it's hoodie season. Summertime is t-shirt season or polo season. That's just it. Like I don't have to think about that. Like what are the things I need to think about? It's like in the mornings, I kind of set up my day, plan everything, think about what I'm doing and get those decisions made. And then I kind of prioritize and, am I going to be ultra responsive today or do I need to block out my day and kind of defer things and hope that there's no emergencies, structuring it so that I don't have to make decisions when it's important for my brain to be focused on other things. I don't have a lot of control over some of it because things are changing all the time. I'm kind of our cloud service management person, our Office 365 admin. And
what you mean, Microsoft 365?
Microsoft 365. And so when the app menu is empty and the little Slack notifications start popping up.
Yeah.
And then I got to go dig into it. And then it's, there's all of the messages in the message center about all the changes that are coming up. And it's like, okay, what am I going to do about this? What am I going to do about that? Right. And then there's stuff in Salesforce and other systems I work with.
Lots of choices.
Lots of choices.
Lots of decisions.
And lots of problem solving. A lot of people coming to me asking me questions. And then a lot of choices that I think about, like, what are we going to do with the server rack that's been turned off for I don't know how many years. And so I am wiped out at the end of the day. I have most days I've got nothing in the tank and I just veg out. And then I try to get the important stuff done on the weekends. And I'm okay with that, but it would be good for me to try to do more to manage the decisions.
Well, and that's a tough thing, right? Like many of your decisions you're able to plan and make, but other decisions come right in the middle, like perfectly good plan, got my whole day planned out. I'm going to do this and this and this. And then lo and behold, here's an emergency. We had that happen on our project. Like, oh, this change that you made, it went into production. You weren't expecting it, or it got into the release branch. You weren't expecting it to be there. And tomorrow's the release. What are we going to do about that? And okay, we'll make a quick fix. The fix itself was 5 minutes, but the act of making your environment be the way that it was 2 weeks ago when the code was cut always tends to throw a little bit of wrench in things, right? Like going forward, going backward. Sometimes your stash doesn't work, and you kind of like, oh, whoops, that I thought I had it all done. I had it all perfect, I swear.
Dude, if you can memorize the intricacies of Git stash and pulling things in and out of, like, more power to you. I am incredibly lazy. I will just, I'm going to delete it and resync. Screw it. I love that there are people that know everything in and out that Git has to offer. That's what we're talking about, right? Source code control.
Yeah.
God, I won't bless those people.
I will not say that I know everything.
I would rather just, can you sync? Can you push? Can you pull? Are we good? Can you merge? We're done. But, I apologize. That was me sidetracking and ranting about.
No, it's understandable.
I want to play along. Branch. I mean, something.
Branch is something. I mean, honestly, Git is a pretty good example of decision fatigue, right? There are a lot of things that tool can do for you in your source code. You can go through your whole life without using 80% of those things.
Yeah.
If you're just, push, pull, sync, that's, if you're just doing those things, you can go through your whole life without getting into merge conflicts and this, that, and the other thing. So,
yeah.
We have a podcast guest.
Yeah. Podcast dog.
Licky the dog.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's great. It's great that folks know all that stuff. I don't think our customers don't necessarily pay us to know everything about Git. Git is a tool that we can use to solve a problem, focus on the problem. And also, if you want, I like folks that can tell me the difference between, pull and fetch and all that stuff, right? That's a cool parlor trick. Necessarily care too much.
It doesn't work in your mental model for source control.
One thing I do know is that Chad has not taught his dog about fetch yet or played fetch, because when he said fetch, the dog didn't do anything. A lot of decisions come with pressure. They come with panic and pain.
Right.
And that makes it so much worse, because then you're trying to make fast decisions, and fast decisions will get you in trouble. But you're like, the website's down, like when I have to problem solve.
Right.
And figure out if
problem solving is another
is it down decision. Or is it our network that you're sitting on? Is it, but it's, and people, exaggerate. It's just kind of human nature. And sometimes they do it because they want a quicker reaction from you. They want it to be a higher priority. They see it as an emergency. I get it. And I don't slap people around for it. I just accept that it happens, but it doesn't help me at all, because then you're putting me in this pressure cooker situation, and that adds to the fatigue.
Yeah, and that's honestly some of the hardest decisions to make, right? Are those decisions that you have to make in an emergency, in a situation that you didn't have time to prepare for, didn't do anything to learn about, didn't get all your ducks in a row, for example. You just, hey, make a decision right now.
I think that's where we make our money, though, right? That's, and honestly, maybe there's going to be a point in our careers where AI can do 75% of what.
No, they already said ChatGPT's running out.
But maybe that becomes a thing, right? But that only means that the 25% that it can't is going to be like 10 times as valuable to our customers, right? The quick things are down decisions that we have to make, the early directional decisions that we have to make. All of that other stuff is going to be ridiculously valuable. And if there's a chunk of it in the middle that honestly is probably monotonous non-work anyway,
right?
Boilerplate stuff, that stuff, we've talked about this before, that stuff is already kind of going away, right? I don't start a project from scratch and set up all my libraries and everything else. I get Spring Boot out there, and it's got magic that handles all of the nonsense that would have taken me, a couple of days to get going,
right?
Even 10 years ago. AI maybe starts to help you, gets integrated in your dev tools, and you start hey, I want to connect to this database. Cool. AI will create your repository for you, create your data objects for you, do all the ridiculous stuff that we don't care about.
Yeah.
And that will help, I think, a ton if some of the fatigue you feel at the end of the day. If you're a heads down developer, AI might help with some of this decision fatigue a little bit. Not that we have to really pick between a repository pattern anymore, but naming conventions and everything else.
No, but that's an interesting way to look at it, right? Like it's not necessarily decision fatigue, but it's certainly fatigue doing things that you've done multiple times and trying to remember, was the parameter better when I set it to true, or was it better when I set it to false? I don't remember. And I can't remember what the default is, and I don't remember if the default was good or not. And but in this situation it's not. And I better go look that up and make sure. Mm-hmm. Let me check the documentation and read about this silly flag that I didn't have to think about. Whereas, maybe AI will take that right out of our workflow and just be like,
I've been on a tear to learn what like Chat GPT can do for me. Like, what can I get out of this? How can this help? And, rewriting stuff, creating lists of things. There's, some code generation so that I can get some old PowerShell code that doesn't work with SharePoint Online. But it's not critical stuff. It's just, and then I have to evaluate it and update it and decide, if I think it's right or not. But I'm finding ways of using it that are really helpful, and a lot of it's just so I can be funny. But not that I couldn't be funny before.
Wait.
That kind of like creative stuff. It's like taking some of the load off to generate content. Because I think having to be creative, like if you're writing something, there's a lot of like just a flow of decision making going on as you're deciding if, and then there's emotion tied to it.
A lot of English words put together in a sentence, right?
One of the hardest things that I have on new projects, especially, is just naming things, right?
Yeah.
Like
oh God,
the blank page problem.
Yep.
I know how to implement a pattern front to back, upside down, inside out, right? But if you ask me to come up with a name for something, I'll stare at a blank page for 15 minutes, just stare at it. Like, what do I call this thing, right? I have no idea.
I am so triggered right now.
I feel like that's going to be a thing that AI, that part of decision making might truly well be a thing of the past for some of us if this stuff gets properly integrated into our tools.
I have worked on many projects doing content management and information architecture, and like, okay, what are we going to name this category? What are we going to name the name of this category? Is it tools? Is it resources? Is it stuff?
Is it business?
Then along that path, there's decisions that aren't mine to make that I'm trying to help them make. So I'm pre-deciding.
Getting somebody to make them?
And then letting them decide that what I decided was okay or if it's not. And they don't have to decide between two things. They just have to say, not it, get another one. Yeah, naming stuff is bad, is hard. And when people rename stuff within systems, if you're a large organization and you change the name of a department, you are not my friend. I have to do so much that you don't even know about behind the scenes. And it's just a burden. But so don't make that decision lightly. Make it in the morning when you're well rested.
It's an interesting way to look at it. Like, in the morning, name your stuff or rename it from the night before where you just set it to A.
Yeah, I do sometimes get like, I'll veg out for a while, and then at like 11 o'clock at night, I'll get like a second wind, and then decision making will just get fired up in my brain. And and then
Brains
I can't sleep. Brains are stupid. So
I'm
simplify, break things down, like make important decisions before you reach that point of fatigue. Routines, patterns, that kind of stuff can help. Some of it's out of your control.
I'm jealous of my my youngest boy. At the beginning of the month, he was deployed. He was in Kuwait for a year. Got all his money in the bank, right? Because when you're deployed to Kuwait in the military, you don't really have a place to spend your money, right? It just all goes into a bank account. So came back. He's been back for a little bit now. He took a vacation to Nashville, right? He's like, hey, Dad, drop me off at the airport. I'm like, cool, man. Come to the airport. The next day he texts me, he's like, man, it's really nice down here. It's a lot for me to do. I think I'd like to live here. The next day he's like, hey, I'm looking at apartments. And the day after that he said, yeah, I signed a lease. I'm going to move down in June. Right. His ability to like just absolutely nail like quick decision making is, now I don't know if that's just an artifact of being what is he, 23-ish, 24, however old he is. But for me, that would be a 5-year plan. Like, hey, I'm gonna, visit a couple of places. I'm gonna go down there. I'm gonna look at all these places. For him, it was, hey, I'm down here. Hey, I like it. Hey, I might live here. Yep, I signed a lease. Hey, I'm moving in June. And now it's all, he's like, can you help me move, Dad? Would you mind?
By the way, I need somebody to drive the U-Haul.
Yeah.
Now, is it just really efficient, fast decision making, or is it compulsiveness? I'm compulsive. I was in a meeting with Adam Johnson, and he mentioned making carnitas in his Instant Pot, and before he finished the sentence, it was ordered and on the way to my house from Amazon.
I think it's impulsive is what we're going for here.
Okay.
But I don't know, right? Like, I think part of it is, in the industry that we're in, depending on what your role is, you're in a position to make hundreds and hundreds of decisions every single day.
Right.
Now, my son, one, he was in the military. Most of his decisions were made for him, right?
Right.
Yes.
And then after that, he does carpentry, right? There's not a lot of decision making there, right? You got to cut, the cuts to make, how to assemble a thing, put it together, you do your stuff. I think there's these what do they call our industry? Like it's knowledge non-knowledge work. Yes, exactly. Like more hands-on folks. I'd be curious to find out from, maybe I'll ask him. He'll be at the meat raffle tonight. I'll ask him like, hey, at the end of the day, are you mentally drained? Are you physically drained? Is it a combination of the two things? Like, what is it for you? And I know his job is physically strenuous. Like it's a lot of work, right?
A lot of work.
But is it mentally taxing? I don't know. I would like to find out.
Yeah. My brother's a painter, and getting people to choose colors, like that's one of his talents, is he's able to help them choose colors. He's really good at it. He's been doing it a long time, so he knows exactly what he's doing. He's like a craftsman by now, but he still has to climb up and down ladders and haul stuff around and roll out the paint and work the sprayer. And he's spraying ceilings. He's got his arms up in the air all day. So he gets home and he's physically exhausted, but he's not mentally exhausted. I get home and I'm mentally exhausted, but I'm not physically exhausted.
Right.
But it's still exhausted.
Right. Yeah, both are pretty tired.
Yeah.
Both are, not really wanting to go out and go crazy or do anything exceptional at that point.
I
shopping for cars.
So speaking of painting, so painted my office, I don't know, a few years ago, right before COVID, and went to the hardware store, and I just wanted gray, right? This is supposed to be gray. I think it shows up as green on camera for some reason.
It does kind of, yellowish green, but that's okay. We'll accept
but
it.
In person, it is gray. And I remember going to Ace Hardware and seeing the cards,
different grays,
for all the paint samples. Yeah, and the guy, and I'm just like, yeah, dude, I just want gray, right? And he's like, oh, what shade of gray? And I'm like, gray.
Gunmetal,
like
putty,
in between black and white, like right in the middle there. I want that one. Okay,
that one. Yeah.
And he's like, well, let's look at some of these. And I'm like, and this one, just make me this, right? Make me a couple of gallons of this. I'm good. I saw another woman there trying to figure out a blue for her son's bedroom.
Yep.
I did this 3 years ago. That woman might still be at that paint counter trying to decide a color of blue.
Blue is another one of those.
I don't understand it, right? The amount of time that you spend staring at paint samples, trying to find the perfect shade. Like, what are you going to get out of this, right? If it's a shade too bright or a shade too dark, are you really going to be that grumpy? This looks green. I'm fine, right? I'll call, it does not affect me at all that I didn't get the absolute perfect shade of gray, right?
The lead designer, Adrian, right, if he listens to this part, he will be cringing. And because he's got like extra cones in his eyes and he sees colors like
sure, okay,
crazy detailed. So he could probably help
regardless
you.
though, right? Like, okay, it's a little too dark. Okay, then what, right? Am I gonna, it doesn't affect my day at
Right.
all that there's that the Pantone is a little like, I'm trying to sound intelligent, like I know what Pantone means, but
Pantone.
That's a company. But the fact of the matter is, like, you don't feel like you have to paint the walls right now. You're sitting there, you've made a decision, and once the paint is on, you don't have to decide again for a number of years until I don't know how many years you're supposed to wait before you paint again.
yeah, I mean, so I think kind of what my point is leading to here is that some of this does feel self-induced, right? Like, oh my God, I'm going to go to the paint counter, I'm going to look at all the samples, and I really do have to pick. I have to pick one, and I'm going to really, really, you know, I'm like, and for me, it's the opposite. I'm like, I'm going to go to the paint sample. I'm going to go to the paint counter. There's 10 colors, right? I'm going to pick one of my 10 colors. It's going to be blue. It's going to be gray. It's going to be white. It's going to be whatever, right? There's no amount of additional happiness that I'm going to get out of absolutely nailing the paint color that I pick for my office, even though I spend probably 1/3 of my life in here. You know, it doesn't matter.
You didn't imagine the perfect gray and say, I will not rest until I have this mental image of gray matched to the color on the card.
Yeah. And for me, that applies to almost every clothes, cars. I saw my truck on the lot. I would have preferred maybe a black one. White one's fine too. I'll get that. Nailing all of these very specific little details to the degree that some people seem to stress out about them, I truly don't understand that, right? And I think this is what leads to what we're calling decision fatigue. You can choose not to participate in it, right? In your personal life, if you want to, because you're not going to be happier. Your walls are the perfect blue, or if your truck is the perfect shade of red, or if you're whatever, right?
Yeah. How good do your decisions need to be?
Yeah. And what are you going to get out of it if you absolutely nail every single decision, right?
Right.
Aside from stress, I think there's a choice to be made. Like there's a conscious choice that you can make to not participate in all of these drivers that affect fatigue, right? Yes, I want to get sorry, Emily. Yes, I want to get things right during my 9 to 5 gig, right? I want my customer to be happy. I want to make some directionally correct decisions around solutions and technology and code and everything else. That's important. Outside of that, I don't know. Just don't participate in it.
But you're talking directionally correct. You're not even talking like, I need to I mean, and we do it all the time, right? I don't need to decide exactly what we're doing, but I need to know if we're building a website, standalone handheld device, right? I need to know some parameters to get started, but I don't have to know it's going to be 4.7 inches by 3.8 inches. It weighs 14 grams. I don't need to know that. I don't care. I just need to know a starting point, a point of reference, and we'll get it better as we go.
Topic Tuesday is the worst.
Yeah. Topic Tuesday is the worst.
So Tuesdays, we select the topic for the podcast if we can. That's what we shoot for. And then we have to finalize it by our Thursday, just pregame. I've been podcasting, and you too, Peter. We've been podcasting. What did we start, 2018 with the internal one?
I have no idea. It's been so long. It's like, wow.
It's well over 100 topics that we've had to pick.
At least.
I don't know how many are left in the tank. Some weeks it's just a dry spell. I got nothing.
Yep. Sometimes it's 1,000. Yeah, and it's difficult. I mean, it's the blank page problem, right? Like coming into a blank page is definitely the hardest.
I did that to a customer early on in my career. I didn't have a wireframe with widgets and options and things like
nice.
that they could choose from.
Just a blank page?
I had a blank, I learned that lesson in about 12 seconds, and we stopped the meeting. I said, okay, I will come back better prepared, and I apologize. And then it worked out.
That's funny.
Keep going.
I mean, and that's honestly, that's one of the better examples, right? Is if you come to a meeting with the business without a choice or two, you have really failed them, right?
Yeah, like you have to have options laid out.
Even if they say, I don't want 1 or 2, they have thought about it enough and they say, but now I want 5. Right. This is what I'm thinking. Go with that. And now make some other wireframes or whatever you want to call it, some other choices. But if you come in there with a white sheet of paper and you say, all right, guys, let's get together and make us a cool thing, you're going to have 20 different ideas and no consensus.
You have to have options. Walking in saying, is this your card? And then they say yes or no. That's better than nothing. People usually don't buy choice number one.
Sure.
Unless choice number two is absolutely horrible. But they want to see two options at least.
And everybody's played that game, right? Like, here's the one I like, and here's the one I hate, and I'm going to make the hated one so horrible that if they choose that one, I will just stop, cry, and give up, because they can't possibly choose this one. It's so horrible. They will have to choose the one that I want.
Yeah, I learned that in the mobile home business way back. They'd say we want 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a front kitchen. And I'd show them one with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen in the middle. And they say, no, okay, well, then I'll show you this other one, which did meet all their criteria. But I had to give them something to shoot down.
Right. Because if
I wasn't trying to trick them. They
were not going to like option number 2. They would be like, well, okay, we've seen what we told you. Now let's see some others that match this.
I just wanted them to be open to the idea. I wasn't trying to trick them. I was trying to open them up so that they could look at it without having that psychological thing about not wanting the first choice.
Right.
So I still feel like I was a good guy.
That must be a sales thing where people don't want the first choice.
It is.
Even if it is the white truck on the lot. It makes sense, right?
I bought my truck pretty quickly, but what I like to do is I like to gather information. I want to fill my head with a whole bunch of stuff so that I can make a good decision quickly.
How many trucks did you drive before you bought yours? That's not a lot of stuff.
No.
Chad, how about you? How many trucks did you drive before you bought?
Zero.
You just picked and pointed?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I knew what I wanted. I found it. I bought it. I'm not a big... I compared. I did a couple of little things, but I knew exactly what I wanted, and I just went and took it. So That is my parting thought. Know what you want and just do it.
I knew the brand. I knew the truck I wanted because I basically dumped my decision on John Helmberger. And so what kind of truck should I get? Because I trust his opinion on vehicles because he knows way more than I do about them. And so I went and got one.
Nice.
I drove an older one first because I knew that if I drove a brand new one, it was all over with and my payment would be way too high. So yeah, I tricked myself into turning down my first choice.
Turning down your first choice?
Yeah.
Nice. I drove probably 8-10 cars before I bought my car.
Wow.
All the different brands, all the different, kind of the same style, but all the different brands just to compare and contrast.
What did you end up buying, Peter?
I got a Honda Accord. I mean, it's a pretty boring car.
Peter.
Standard.
So you got...
But I tried a Toyota, Corolla or whatever, Avalon.
Camry.
Tried a Mazda, tried a Chevy, I tried them all, kicked the tires. I wanted to make
the Accord.
Huh?
Were you always going to get the Accord?
That was always top of the list.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. But I wanted to make sure that I wanted to see the mobile home with the kitchen in the middle and the 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, just to make sure.
So do you feel better now that you've driven all 8 of them?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I do.
was right the first time. Okay.
No, I wanted to, I would have been second guessing it.
Peter, what color is it?
Gray. It's gray. I got that color because I don't like washing my car an awful lot. If I really liked washing my car, I'd get a black one because those you get to wash all the time.
Yeah. That's why my Charger is white.
Yeah. White is a good color for that too.
Yeah. And that's why my truck is burgundy and filthy. So any parting thoughts, gentlemen, as we wind down?
Yeah, I think you can. I surely do think you can just choose not to participate in the overwhelming number of choices and options and everything that you are presented with every day, right? Like just
right.
If you're the kind of person that's going to stress out about that, choose not to. I have, and it's worked amazingly well for me.
Yeah, I will say this. When presented with equal decisions, I will sometimes let a random number generator make that decision because it doesn't matter.
Flip a coin.
Flip a coin.
Yeah. I'm like Two-Face on Batman. Every decision is the flip of a coin.
That's a lot of... That guy tosses a coin a lot.
Yes. All right. Well, I think with that, we should wind her down and say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.